PT Core's reorder paragraphs are the hardest parts in reading. Now, this is one of the hardest ones, which barely anyone gets right. So if you want to try this yourself, you can pause the video, try it yourself. You have to arrange them in the correct order as they're scrambled currently. So if you haven't done that already, I'm going to get into it and I'm going to answer this. First of all, the very first thing you want to do is, and this saves you time because time is a concern too. So the very first thing you want to do is look at words that will show you the sequence in the first few lines or the first few words, and you can just eliminate the ones that you know for sure are going to be towards the end. For example, something like this: the final act drew. The final one, the last, or the next step, those things tell me that this is obviously going to be later in the story. So 5, not even going to think about it. Throughout the performance is something that is an ongoing process similar to as the curtain rose. This is a continuation of a story. Obviously, it's not going to be the first sentence. So now I'm only left with 2, 3, and 4. Now, you can easily eliminate 2 and 4 here because 4 is talking about the intermission offered a moment. Now, that one is, by the way, you need to know those words. Intermission would mean pause or break. And if you don't, you want to improve your vocabulary because PT Core reading is pretty difficult. So that is a break in between the performance or whatever event is taking place. Similarly, the anticipation built as, so we're talking about the anticipation of something building, but we don't even have an intro, like anticipation of what. Now, be careful because sometimes the topics start like these. And this is where it's like a story. The anticipation built as I was walking down the street. And this could very well be the intro. So we want to read something like this and this as well. But I'm leaning more towards 3 because 3 is very clearly introducing a story. I remember walking into the ornate opera house. So we're going to read this further. A structure that commanded respect with its lavish architecture and the history it carried. Now this is all gibberish. This is additional, so you are confused. Don't worry, it's not going to help you find the sequence, and you don't need to work on every word here and pay attention to it. Just try to summarize this for yourself. So it was a beautiful building, right? That's the summary of that. So you walked into this opera house. It was a beautiful building. Okay, what's next? Make it simple for yourself. Feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness about the cultural evening that lay ahead. So this is perfect because it's talking about the event that lay ahead. Now this is going to come next. Obviously, there should be many sentences following this. This sentence definitely will be at the start. Once again, I'm going to make it simple for myself. You walked into the opera house, saw a beautiful building, and you had excitement and nervousness. Fine. Let's look at this as well. And there's no harm in spending time reading it because you will later have to deal with the sentence and place it in some other place. In fact, it could be the very next sentence because it seemed very similar to the starting sentence. And usually it's like that. If you think of 2 sentences that typically start, then the next sentence that you don't pick is usually the second sentence in sequence. So it says the anticipation built up as I mingled with the elegantly dressed crowd in the opulent foyer. Now, this anticipation is very similar to excitement and nervousness. It makes sense that this could be the next sentence because we're still following up on our feelings here. So now it says the anticipation built, so it's further getting more. The chatter about composers and areas was foreign to me, yet it sparked a curiosity about the spectacle I was about to witness. So this is again talking about the spectacle he is about to witness. It's not yet started, so it also looks like the beginning of something. Now, I would think 3 goes first and 2 goes next, but I don't know if 2 is next. I have to read the other options, but here's where you have to do yourself a favor. Just assume 3 is first and 2 is next. Do it like that so you save time and you're not just reading everything with every option. Just assume this. We have to go with some assumptions. And now we can move faster. Later, if 2 is wrong, we'll come back and adjust. Okay? So for now, I'm thinking 3 is first, 2 is the next one. Now we have as the curtains rose. That makes sense. That could be the next sequence because you have the beginning here, the event has not started. Now the curtains rose, so now something could happen. This could very well be your next sentence. Intermission wouldn't happen because the event has not started. Final act is the last sentence most likely. Throughout the performance I was struck. No, the performance has not started yet. This is where the performance starts. This would be appropriate for the third sentence. And now you can see from this angle that 3 and 2 were the right choices. The others are talking about what's happening in the middle and at the end of the performance. So this saved you time when you just accepted that 2 might be the next option and you moved on, and now you're looking at this one. I'm very certain it's the next one. We'll just read it to make sure. As the curtain rose and the first notes resonated throughout the grandiose hall, I was instantly transported into another world, one where every gesture and note was imbued with emotion, and I was skeptical of the opera. There's so much gibberish here. Basically, the curtains rose and he was excited and also skeptical, but he was entranced. Okay, good for him. Now that we have our first 3 sentences done, now we need to figure out the rest. Okay, if you did the first 3 correct, you are intermediate, not higher. The next ones will determine if you're actually an advanced reader, because this is where everybody makes a mistake. So if you haven't already, pause the video, think about what comes next. Okay? All right, 5, pretty simple. It should be the end because it is the final act. But again, don't always rely on this. Sometimes words like these, like the final act, are given to you to confuse you into thinking it's simple, but it's actually not. So always be careful. In this case, we will read. The main confusion comes between 4 and 6. And this is where all students get confused and they mix this up. So let's read it. Intermission offered a moment of reflection. This could make sense right after this one. I mean, the curtains rose and there was gestures and stuff, so people were performing, so now you can have a break, sure. Or this one, throughout the performance, I was struck by the sheer talent. So I haven't read the sentences entirely. I'm trying to get an answer right now because I always should attempt to find something and later I'll come back and confirm it. This saves you time. But right now I'm confused because this could go here and this could go here as well. So if you're confused, instead of picking, you have to read and decide between the options. So it talks about the intermission, where there's a moment of reflection, where conversations with seasoned opera goers enlighten me on the nuances of the performance, adding layers to the understanding of what I had seen and what was still to come. So I'm going to spend some more time trying to understand this because this and option 6 look very similar, and this is where the debate is going to be. With the right keywords and the right approach, I'll be able to get it. Basically, in simplified terms, again, I'm going to paraphrase for myself. He's saying that when there was a pause, there were conversations with season ongoers, like the crowd around him, and they told him about the performance, and he really understood what this is all about. Okay. And this one is talking about throughout the performance, I was struck by the sheer talent of the performers whose voices could convey a range of emotions without a single word being understood by me. Okay, there you go. There's something here. You didn't understand anything. Okay, turning my lack of knowledge, lack of language comprehension into a non-issue. So there was a mention of how throughout the performance, this guy didn't understand anything. And here, there was a mention of how the people around him told him, the audience told him about how this whole thing works. In sequence, which one would fit? Well, the first time he mentions his confusion should likely go first, followed by the next thing that he says that, okay, now because of the seasoned opera ongoers, because of the crowd around him that were attending the ongoers, they told him about the performance, the confusion got cleared, so now he is okay. That means this should be the next sentence in sequence, number 6, followed by number 4. Now, it's still not 100% clear. So what I'll do is I'll add another layer. I'll see the next sentence and see which sentence could be second last to this probably last sentence. The final act drew to a close with a powerful crescendo. So, okay, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's talking about the last act. Now, the last act can come after the intermission, like there was a pause and then there was the last act. It could come after this thing, that throughout the performance, this guy didn't understand anything. So it could really go into any area. That didn't help me. Let me see the sentence right before all of this one. This was talking about how the curtains rose and there was one every gesture and noted it was beautiful. He loved it. Okay. At this point, he hasn't really talked about the performance much. So, is it right to just jump to intermission? No. You want to talk about the performance throughout it, what happened. That's what's mentioned here. If in that sequence, you have the curtains, you walked, you have the curtains opening, then you saw the performance, then there was the intermission, and then there was the final act. That makes more sense. So what we have to do, guys, is look at, obviously, startings of sentences to quickly get ideas. And once you're having good ideas, like here, you quickly go step by step. When it's easy, you just jump. You don't have to overanalyze. But you also have to see the sequence and make quick assumptions because you don't have time to read every sentence every time. We assumed that 3 is the first, 2 is the next, and we jumped on to 1. And then the debate came between 4 and 6. When the debate is really controversial, all you got to do is summarize the words in your own mind, simplify them just like I simplified them, and look at the sentences before, or in this case after, and before the confusing sentences to give you an idea of the flow. So this is one of the hardest PT Core reorder paragraph questions. And you want to make sure you practice with materials like these, which luckily we offer in our 15-hour PT Core course packed with difficult materials like these that are going to challenge you to your fullest. If you are interested, check out the link in the description. Please like, share, and subscribe. We'll talk soon.